I never thought the person I'd loved for 25 years would destroy me. But when I saw his car parked in my sister's driveway at midnight, my entire world shattered into a million pieces. I'm Martha, and at 62 years old, I thought I knew what betrayal looked like. I'd seen it in movies, read about it in books, heard about it happening to friends. But nothing, absolutely nothing, prepares you for the moment you realize the two people you loved most in this world have been conspiring behind your back, that they've been laughing at you, using you, that every "I love you" was a lie. Let me take you back to the beginning, because this story didn't start with betrayal. It started with love, real love, or at least what I thought was real love. I met Richard when I was 35 years old. I'd been married once before, briefly in my 20s. That marriage ended amicably enough. We were just too young, too different. But Richard, softly, Richard was different. He was charming, successful, attentive. He was a financial consultant, always dressed impeccably, always knew the right thing to say. When he proposed after dating for 2 years, I felt like the luckiest woman alive. My sister Diane was my maid of honor. She was 4 years younger than me, 33 at the time, and still single. She'd always been the prettier one, the more outgoing one. Growing up, I was the responsible older sister who got good grades and followed the rules. Diane was the wild child, the one who got away with everything because of her smile and her charm. But I never resented her for it. I loved her. She was my baby sister. And after our parents died in a car accident when I was 28 and she was 24, we only had each other. The early years of my marriage to Richard were wonderful. We bought a beautiful house in the suburbs, a 4-bedroom colonial with a garden I spent years perfecting. Richard's business was thriving. We traveled together, had dinner parties, talked about our dreams. We tried for children, but it never happened for us. The doctor said it was unexplained infertility. We considered adoption, but Richard wasn't enthusiastic about it, so we let it go. I convinced myself it was fine. We had each other, and that was enough. Diane was always around. She'd come over for Sunday dinners, for holidays, for impromptu visits. After a series of failed relationships, she seemed to struggle financially. Her secretarial job didn't pay much, and she was always behind on rent, always had some crisis or another. And I helped her. Of course I helped her. She was my sister. Over the years, I gave her money. Not small amounts either. When she couldn't make rent, I'd give her $800. When her car broke down, I gave her $2,300 for repairs. When she needed money for dental work, I gave her $1,500. Richard would sometimes raise an eyebrow, but he never stopped me. "She's your sister," he'd say with a shrug. "Family helps family." I kept a mental tally, not because I wanted the money back, but part of me couldn't believe how much it added up to. Over the course of 15 years, I calculated that I'd given Diane close to $47,000. Deep breath. $47,000. My inheritance from our parents' life insurance, money I'd been saving, money from my own part-time job as a librarian. I never made her feel bad about it. I never threw it in her face. I just loved her and wanted to help. Richard was supportive of my relationship with Diane, or so I thought. He'd always greet her warmly when she came over, ask about her life, laugh at her jokes. Sometimes the three of us would watch movies together. Diane curled up on one end of our couch, me in the middle, Richard on the other end. Quietly, it felt like family. It felt safe. But looking back now, I can see the signs I missed. The way Richard would sometimes glance at Diane when he thought I wasn't looking. The way she'd touch his arm when she laughed at his jokes, letting her hand linger just a second too long. The way they'd sometimes exchange looks I couldn't quite read. Whisper, I told myself I was imagining things. I told myself I was being paranoid and insecure. About 3 years ago, things started to shift. Richard began working late more often. He'd come home at 9, 10, sometimes 11 at night, smelling of cologne and restaurant food. Client dinners, he'd explain, kissing my forehead. You know how it is. I have to wine and dine them to keep their business. I believed him. He was a financial consultant. Of course he had client dinners. Diane, meanwhile, seemed to be doing better financially. She moved into a nicer apartment, started dressing in more expensive clothes, got her hair done regularly at a salon that charged $200 a visit. When I asked her about it, she'd wave her hand dismissively. Oh, I got a raise. Or I'm just managing my money better. I was happy for her.
Around 2 years ago, Richard started suggesting that Diane join us on our vacations. She works so hard, he'd say, and she never gets to go anywhere nice. Why don't we invite her to come to the beach house with us? I agreed, thinking it would be fun to have my sister along. So Diane came with us to Cape Cod, and then to Vermont for a ski trip, and then to Florida. And every time I'd notice little things. The way they'd go for long walks together while I stayed back to read. The way they'd laugh together over inside jokes I didn't understand. The way Richard would help Diane with her sunscreen, his hands lingering on her shoulders. I'd feel a twist in my stomach, a whisper of unease, but I'd push it down. No. Richard loved me. Diane loved me. They wouldn't do that to me. I was being ridiculous. I was being an insecure old woman, jealous of her younger, prettier sister. But the unease grew. Richard became more distant. He'd come to bed after I'd fallen asleep and would be up and out of the house before I woke. Our sex life, which had never been passionate but had been steady, dwindled to nothing. When I tried to talk to him about it, he'd say he was stressed about work, that he was tired, that he still loved me, but just needed space. And I gave him space. I gave him all the space he wanted. 6 months ago, something inside me snapped. It was a Tuesday evening. Richard had called to say he was working late again, that he had a big client meeting and wouldn't be home until midnight. I said okay, told him I loved him, hung up the phone. And then I felt it, that sick feeling in the pit of my stomach that something was very, very wrong. I'd never been the jealous type. I'd never been the suspicious type. But that night, I couldn't shake the feeling. So I did something I'd never done before. I tracked his phone. We had a family plan, one of those apps that lets you see where everyone is for safety reasons. I'd never used it before, but that night I opened it with shaking hands and watched the little dot that represented my husband's location. He wasn't at his office. He wasn't at a restaurant. He was at a residential address in the suburbs, about 20 minutes from our house. I stared at the screen for 10 minutes, watching the dot stay perfectly still. My heart was pounding. My mouth was dry. Maybe it was a client's house, I told myself. Maybe he was meeting them there. But I had to know. I had to know for sure. So I got in my car, hands trembling so badly I could barely hold the steering wheel, and I drove to the address. The streets were dark, lit only by street lamps. It was just after 10 o'clock. When I turned onto the street, my blood turned to ice. I knew exactly where I was. I'd been to this street dozens of times. I'd been to this building dozens of times. It was Diane's apartment complex. The little dot on my phone was showing Richard's location at my sister's apartment. I stared at the screen for 10 minutes, watching the dot stay perfectly still. My heart was pounding. My mouth was dry. Maybe it was a client's house, I told myself. Maybe he was meeting them there. But I had to know. I had to know for sure. So I got in my car, hands trembling so badly I could barely hold the steering wheel, and I drove to the address. The streets were dark, lit only by street lamps. It was just after 10 o'clock. When I turned onto the street, my blood turned to ice. I knew exactly where I was. I'd been to the street dozens of times. I'd been to this building dozens of times. It was Diane's apartment complex. The little dot on my phone was showing Richard's location at my sister's apartment. I parked across the street, my hands gripping the wheel so tight, my knuckles turned white. I sat there for what felt like hours, but was probably only 20 minutes, and then I saw them. Through Diane's second floor window, I could see shadows moving. I saw Richard's silhouette. I saw him pull someone into an embrace. I saw them kiss. I should have stormed in there. I should have confronted them right then, but I couldn't move. I couldn't breathe. I just sat in my car watching my entire life crumble before my eyes. I don't know how long I sat there. Eventually, I drove home in a daze, went inside our empty house, and sat in the dark living room, staring at nothing. Richard came home just after midnight, just like he'd said. He was humming as he walked in the door, completely oblivious. "Hey, hon, you still up?" I turned on the lamp next to me. He jumped, startled. "Jesus, Martha, you scared me. Why are you sitting in the dark?" I stared at him. This man I'd loved for 25 years. This man I'd built a life with. This man I'd trusted with everything. "How was work?" I asked, my voice flat. "Oh, long. The client was demanding, but I think we closed the deal." He smiled at me, that same charming smile that had won me over all those years ago, and I realized it meant nothing. It had never meant anything. "That's good," I said. I didn't tell him what I knew. Not yet. I couldn't. I needed time to think. I needed to understand the full scope of what was happening. For the next 2 weeks, I tracked him every night he said he was working late. And every single time he went to Diane's apartment. 4 times in 2 weeks. I started paying attention to their interactions when we were all together. The way they'd text each other constantly, the way Diane would find excuses to touch him, the way Richard would light up when she entered a room, in a way he never lit up for me anymore. I thought about confronting them. I thought about screaming, throwing things, demanding the truth. But something held me back. I wanted to know more. I wanted to understand how long this had been going on. I wanted evidence. So I did something I'd never done before. I hired a private investigator. His name was Marcus Chen, a retired police detective who now ran a private investigation firm. I met him at a coffee shop 30 minutes from my house, somewhere I knew I wouldn't run into anyone I knew. I felt ridiculous at first, like I was in a bad movie. But Marcus was professional and kind. He didn't judge me. He just listened and took notes. "How long do you want me to follow them?" he asked. "A month," I said, firmly. "I want to know everything. Where they go, how often they meet, how long this has been going on. I want photographic evidence. I want proof I can't deny." The cost was $3,500 for a month of surveillance. I didn't care. I paid it with my credit card, the one Richard didn't have access to. And then I waited. Those 4 weeks were the longest of my life. I had to pretend everything was normal. I had to smile at Richard over breakfast, kiss him goodbye when he left for work, make small talk about our days. I had to welcome Diane into my home every Sunday, serve her dinner, laugh at her jokes, all while knowing she was sleeping with my husband. It was torture. Absolute torture. But I held on because I needed the truth. Marcus called me exactly 4 weeks later. "We need to meet," he said. "I have your report." I met him at the same coffee shop. He handed me a thick manila envelope, his expression sympathetic. "I'm sorry, Mrs. Anderson. You were right about everything." I waited until I got home to open it. Richard was at work. Or at least he said he was at work. I sat at the kitchen table, hands shaking, and pulled out the contents of the envelope. There were photographs, dozens of them. Richard and Diane holding hands as they walked into restaurants. Richard and Diane kissing in her car.
Richard and Diane going into hotels together in the middle of the afternoon, time-stamped, dated, undeniable. But it was the written report that destroyed me. Marcus had done more than just follow them. He'd investigated their financial records, their phone records, their digital footprints. And what he found was worse than I could have imagined. The affair had been going on for 3.5 years. 3.5 years, almost since the time Richard started working late. The nicer apartment Diane had moved into, Richard was paying for it. He'd rented it under his company name as a business expense. The expensive clothes, the salon visits, the nice dinner she suddenly could afford, all Richard's money. Our money. Money from our joint accounts. Money he was supposed to be investing for our retirement. Marcus estimated that Richard had spent approximately $87,000 on Diane over the course of 3.5 years. $87,000! Rent, gifts, trips, restaurants, clothes. He'd been supporting her entirely. While I had been giving her money out of love, he'd been giving her money as payment for being his mistress. There were text messages too. Marcus had managed to retrieve deleted messages from phone records. I read them with tears streaming down my face. Messages where Richard called me the old ball and chain. Messages where Diane referred to me as your boring wife. Messages where they laughed about how clueless I was, how easy it was to fool me. Messages where they discussed their future together, how they'd wait until I was older and more dependent, and then Richard would divorce me and marry Diane. One message in particular is burned into my brain. Richard had written, just a few more years, once she's 65, she'll be less likely to fight the divorce. We'll get the house, split the retirement accounts, and you and I can finally be together publicly. I'm tired of sneaking around, but it'll be worth it in the end. I love you, babe. And Diane had responded, I love you too. Poor Martha has no idea. Sometimes I almost feel bad for her, but then I remember she's had you for 25 years. It's my turn now. Smiley face. I put the papers down and walked to the bathroom. I threw up. I threw up until there was nothing left inside me, until I was dry heaving over the toilet, my whole body shaking. When I finally stopped, I looked at myself in the mirror. I looked old. I looked tired. I looked like exactly what they'd called me, a boring old wife who was in the way. But then something changed. Something inside me hardened. I looked at my reflection and I thought, no, I'm not going to be their victim. I'm not going to make this easy for them. They want to destroy me. They want to take everything I've worked for. They're going to have to fight for it. I called Marcus back. I need to see you again. And this time, I need a referral. I need the best divorce attorney in the state. Marcus didn't hesitate. I know just the person. Her name is Patricia Wolf. She's a shark, expensive but worth every penny. She specializes in cases involving infidelity and hidden assets. I made an appointment with Patricia Wolf for the following Monday. I told Richard I was going shopping with a friend. He barely looked up from his phone. Okay, hun, have fun, he said absently. He was probably texting Diane. Patricia Wolf's office was in a high-rise downtown, all glass and chrome and expensive furniture. Patricia herself was in her 50s, impeccably dressed in a navy suit, her gray hair cut in a sharp bob. She had the kind of face that looked like it never smiled, but her eyes were intelligent and assessing. She shook my hand with a firm grip and gestured for me to sit. Tell me everything, she said. So I did. I told her about the 25-year marriage, about Diane, about the affair, about the money, about the text messages, about their plan to wait until I was 65 to divorce me. I gave her Marcus's entire report. Patricia read through it carefully, making notes, her expression never changing. When I finished, she looked up at me. "Mrs. Anderson, your husband and your sister have committed what we call dissipation of marital assets. He's been spending significant amounts of your joint money on his affair. In this state, that's grounds for a very favorable settlement for you." "What does that mean?" "It means," Patricia said, a small smile finally appearing on her face, "that we're going to destroy him financially. He took your money, your time, your trust, and threw it all away on his mistress. The court is not going to look kindly on that. By the time we're done, you're going to walk away with the house, the majority of the retirement accounts, alimony, and possibly even damages for emotional distress." "What about Diane?" I asked. Quietly, can she be held accountable? Patricia considered this. "We can't sue her for adultery in this state, but we can make sure everyone knows what she did. We can depose her. We can make her testify under oath about the affair. We can make her sit in court while we show the judge every text message, every receipt, every photograph. Firmly, we can humiliate her publicly." For the first time in weeks, I felt a spark of hope. "What do I do now?" "First, we file for divorce. Immediately. We don't give him any warning. We don't tell him we know about the affair. We just serve him papers at work as publicly as possible. Second, we freeze the joint accounts. We get court orders preventing him from moving or hiding assets. Third, we gather every piece of financial documentation you can find: bank statements, credit card bills, investment accounts, everything. And fourth," she leaned forward, her eyes sharp, "you don't tell anyone what you're doing. Not your friends, not your husband, and especially not your sister. The element of surprise is our greatest weapon." I paid Patricia a $10,000 retainer on the spot, money from my personal savings account, the one Richard didn't know about, the one I've been quietly adding to for years, just a little bit here and there from my librarian salary. I'd been saving it for a special trip for our 30th anniversary. Instead, I was using it to blow up my marriage. Over the next 2 weeks, I quietly gathered documentation. I photocopied bank statements, downloaded digital records, made lists of all our assets. I did it all while Richard was at work or working late. And I acted completely normal. I smiled at him. I made his favorite dinners. I laughed at his jokes. I even told him I loved him, though the words tasted like ash in my mouth. Diane came over for Sunday dinner, just like always. I served her pot roast, her favorite. We talked about her job, about the weather, about nothing important. She hugged me goodbye when she left. "Love you, sis," she said, smiling that bright smile. "Love you too." And I meant it. I loved the sister I thought I had. The real Diane, the woman sitting in front of me, I didn't know her at all. The divorce papers were served on a Wednesday morning. Patricia had arranged for a process server to meet Richard at his office at 9:30 a.m., right when the office would be the busiest. I wasn't there to see it, but Patricia called me afterwards and described the scene. Apparently, Richard had been in the middle of a meeting with several colleagues when the process server walked in, asked him by name, and handed him the papers in front of everyone. I'm told he went white as a sheet. He tried to play it off, said it must be some kind of mistake. But everyone in that office now knows Richard Anderson is getting divorced. He called me 30 minutes later. I was at home, sitting in the living room, my heart pounding, but my resolve firm. I let it ring 3 times before I answered. "Hello? Martha? Martha, what the hell is this? Did you seriously serve me with divorce papers at work?" His voice was sharp, angry, confused. "Yes," I said simply. Why? What's going on? Is this some kind of joke?" "No joke, Richard. I want a divorce." "But why?" Where is this coming from? I don't understand. He was getting louder, more agitated. We need to talk about this. I'm coming home right now. Don't do anything until we talk. There's nothing to talk about. Martha, this is insane. You can't just... After 25 years, you can't just... I know about Diane. The line went silent, completely silent. I could picture his face, the color draining away, his mind racing. What?
I know about you and Diane. I know about the affair. I know about the apartment you're paying for. I know about the $87,000 you've spent on her. I know about your plans to wait until I'm 65 to divorce me so I'd be less likely to fight back. I know everything, Richard. I have proof. Photographs, bank records, text messages. Everything. More silence. Then in a small voice I'd never heard from him before. Martha, I can explain. No, I don't want to hear it. You're going to get a call from your lawyer. Oh, wait. You don't have a lawyer yet, do you? You're going to need one. A good one. Because I have the best divorce attorney in the state, and she's going to make sure you pay for what you did to me.
Martha, please, let's talk about this. It's not what you think.
It's exactly what I think. You've been sleeping with my sister for 3.5 years. You've been stealing our money to support her. You've been planning to dump me once I was old enough that I wouldn't fight back. How dare you tell me it's not what I think? I'd never shouted at him before. Not once in 25 years. The force of my own anger shocked me. But it also felt good. It felt powerful. I'm sorry, he said, and now he was crying.
Actually crying? I'm so sorry, Martha. I made a terrible mistake. I love you. I've always loved you. It just happened. I never meant to hurt you.
You never meant to hurt me? For 3.5 years, you were actively choosing to hurt me every single day. You made a choice, Richard. Over and over, you chose her over me. You chose to lie to me. You chose to spend our money on her. You chose to mock me in text messages, so don't you dare tell me you never meant to hurt me.
What do you want me to do?
His voice was desperate now.
Tell me what to do. I'll end it with Diane. I'll do anything. Please, Martha, don't throw away 25 years.
You threw away 25 years. Not me. You did this, and now you're going to face the consequences. I hung up. My hands were shaking, but I felt exhilarated. I'd stood up to him. I'd told him the truth. I'd taken my power back. He called again immediately. I didn't answer. He called 5 more times. I blocked his number. Then Diane called. I let it go to voicemail. Her message was frantic. Martha, please, we need to talk. Richard just called me. He said you know about us. Please let me explain. You have to understand we never wanted to hurt you. We fell in love. We couldn't help it. Please call me back. Please, I'm your sister. I love you. We can work through this. I deleted the voicemail without responding. She called again. I blocked her number too. That evening, Patricia called with an update. The temporary restraining order on the joint accounts has been approved. He can't touch that money now without court permission. I've also filed a motion for exclusive possession of the marital home. With any luck, we'll have him out of there within a week. Week?
He's gonna have to live somewhere else?
Absolutely. In cases of infidelity, especially when there's evidence of financial misconduct, judges are typically very sympathetic to the wrong spouse. You shouldn't live with him while this plays out. Besides, Patricia's voice was amused. Where else is he gonna go? Oh, right. Diane's apartment, the one he's been paying for. Let him stay there officially now. I spent that night alone in the house.
I'd changed the locks that afternoon, something Patricia had advised. Richard came home around 7 o'clock and found his key didn't work. I watched from the upstairs window as he stood on the porch, trying his key again and again, confusion, then anger crossing his face. He rang the doorbell. He knocked. He called my name. I sat in the dark and listened to him beg to be let in. Eventually, he gave up and left. I saw him sit in his car for a long time before finally driving away. I didn't feel guilty. I felt relief. The next morning, Patricia called again. The judge has approved the motion. Richard has 48 hours to remove his personal belongings from the house. After that, he's not allowed on the property without a police escort. I'm having the order delivered to him this morning. Things moved quickly after that. Richard hired an attorney, a man named Roger Stevens, who had a reputation for being aggressive but not particularly effective. Patricia knew him and wasn't worried. "He's a blowhard," she said. "All bark, no bite." Roger's going to try to paint you as the unreasonable party, but we have too much evidence. He can't win this. Richard came back to the house with a police officer 2 days later to collect his things. I watched from the kitchen as he loaded boxes into his car. He looked awful. Unshaven, rumpled, his eyes red. He kept glancing at the house like he wanted to come inside and talk to me, but the police officer stayed with him the entire time, and I stayed inside with the doors locked. Before he left, he tried one more time. He walked up to the front door and called through it, "Martha, please, just talk to me for 5 minutes. That's all I'm asking."
I walked to the door, but didn't open it. "There's nothing to say, Richard. Talk to your lawyer. That's the only communication we're having from now on." "You really hate me that much?" "I don't hate you. I just don't love you anymore. You killed that love yourself." I heard him start to cry again, but I walked away. I couldn't let him manipulate me with tears. I'd cried enough tears for both of us over the past month. Now it was his turn. The next few months were a blur of legal proceedings. Depositions, court hearings, settlement negotiations. Patricia was ruthless. She presented every text message, every photograph, every receipt. She showed the judge the evidence of Richard spending $87,000 of marital funds on his mistress. She brought in Marcus to testify about his investigation. She made Richard admit, under oath, to every single detail of the affair. Roger tried to argue that the marriage had been irretrievably broken and that Richard deserved half of everything, regardless of the affair. Patricia destroyed that argument in about 30 seconds, pointing out that Richard had been planning to divorce me for years and had been actively siphoning marital assets to support his mistress. The judge was not impressed with Richard. And then there was Guyanne's deposition. Patricia had insisted we depose her, even though she wasn't technically a party to the divorce. "I want her on record," she had said. "I want her to have to sit in a room and admit what she did. And I want her testimony in case we need it later." The deposition was held in Patricia's conference room. I insisted on being there. Patricia advised against it. "It's going to be hard to sit there and listen to the details," she warned. "I don't care. I want to look her in the eye." So I sat in that conference room at one end of a long table, while Diane sat at the other end. She looked different than she had at our last Sunday dinner. Thinner, paler, scared. She wouldn't meet my eyes at first, but Patricia made her. "State your full name for the record," Patricia began. "Diane Marie Harper." "And what is your relationship to Martha Anderson?" "She's my sister." "And what is your relationship to Richard Anderson?" Diane hesitated. Her lawyer, a young man who looked fresh out of law school, leaned over and whispered something to her. She nodded. I've been in a romantic relationship with Richard Anderson for approximately 3.5 years. A romantic relationship, Patricia repeated. Is that what you call sleeping with your sister's husband? Diane's lawyer objected, but Patricia waved him off. She spent the next 2 hours methodically walking Diane through every detail of the affair. When it started, how often they met, how much money Richard gave her, the text messages, the trips, the lies they told me. At one point, Patricia asked, "Did you ever feel guilty about what you were doing to your sister?" Diane finally looked at me. There were tears in her eyes. Yes, every day. But I loved Richard. I couldn't help it. Love, I said, speaking for the first time. Patricia had told me not to say anything, but I couldn't stop myself. You call that love? You call destroying your own sister love? Martha, please. Diane started. No, you don't get to talk to me. You don't get to explain. You took everything from me. My husband, my money, my trust. You made me doubt myself, doubt my worth. You were my sister, my baby sister. I gave you everything. I helped you when no one else would. I loved you. And you repaid me by sleeping with my husband and laughing about how stupid I was. Diane was crying harder now. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I never wanted it to happen this way. We were going to tell you eventually, I swear. We were going to do it the right way. The right way. There is no right way to do what you did. You're disgusting, both of you. And I hope you're miserable together. Patricia put a hand on my arm. Martha, she said gently, let's take a break. I left the room. I stood in the hallway and tried to catch my breath. Part of me felt better for saying those things to Diane's face, but part of me just felt empty. The deposition continued without me. Patricia told me later that Diane had completely fallen apart, crying through most of her remaining testimony. She knows she messed up and she knows she's lost you forever. That's punishment enough in some ways. But I wasn't satisfied. I wanted more than just Diane's tears. I wanted everyone to know what she'd done. And then an opportunity presented itself. My niece, Diane's daughter from a brief relationship in her 20s, was getting married. Jenna was 28, a sweet girl I'd always been close to. She'd asked both Diane and me to be at the wedding, had asked me specifically to sit in the mother of the bride chair since Diane wanted to be able to walk around and mingle. I had agreed to go, back when I'd known about the affair.
Now, Jenna called me crying. Aunt Martha, please don't let this ruin my wedding. I know what Mom and Uncle Richard did. I'm furious with them. But please, can we all just be civil for one day for me? I considered it. Part of me wanted to skip the wedding entirely, to cut off all contact with that side of the family. But another part of me saw an opportunity. I'll be there, I told Jenna. I promise I won't make a scene. The wedding was in early October, about 6 months after I'd filed for divorce. The divorce itself wasn't final yet. These things take time. But the court had already ruled in my favor on most of the major points. I was getting the house. I was getting 70% of the retirement accounts, with the court noting that Richard had dissipated marital assets. I was getting alimony of $3,500 a month for 10 years. Richard was, in Patricia's words, financially screwed. I bought a new dress for the wedding. Not anything flashy, just a simple but elegant navy dress that made me look good.
I'd lost weight over the past 6 months. Stress will do that. And I'd started taking better care of myself. New haircut, new makeup, regular walks in the morning. I was starting to look like myself again. Or maybe a new version of myself. Stronger, harder, better. The wedding was at a country club about an hour from my house. I drove myself, my hands steady on the wheel. I wasn't nervous. I wasn't anxious. I was ready. When I walked into the reception hall, heads turned. I could see people whispering, nudging each other. Everyone knew about the divorce by now. In our social circle, it had been the scandal of the year. Richard Anderson, respected financial consultant, caught having an affair with his wife's sister. The whispers had spread like wildfire. His business had suffered. Several clients had left him. It turns out people don't trust their money to a man who steals from his own wife. I spotted Diane across the room. She looked terrible. Her face was drawn, her eyes hollow. The expensive clothes and salon hair were gone. She was wearing a dress that looked like it came from a discount store, and her roots were showing. Richard had stopped paying for her apartment 3 months ago after I'd frozen the joint accounts. She'd had to move into a studio in a bad part of town. I'd heard through the grapevine that she'd been fired from her secretarial job for having an affair with a married man. Word had gotten around to her employer. Richard was standing next to her, and he looked even worse. He'd aged 10 years in 6 months. His face was gaunt, his eyes had dark circles, and his suit looked like he slept in it. Good. When Richard saw me, he went pale. He said something to Diane, and they both stared at me. I walked right past them without acknowledging either of them, my head held high. I heard Diane call out, "Martha, wait!" But I kept walking. I found my seat at the mother of the bride table, right up front. Jenna had kept it reserved for me, despite everything. I sat down and smiled at the other guests at my table, older relatives I hadn't seen in years. They knew who I was. They knew what happened, and the looks they gave me were sympathetic, supportive. The ceremony was beautiful. Jenna looked radiant in her wedding dress, and her fiancé, a nice young man named David, couldn't stop smiling at her. I felt genuinely happy for them. Young love. Real love. Not whatever twisted thing Richard and Diane had. During the reception, I stayed at my table, eating the meal, sipping my wine, chatting pleasantly with the other guests. I watched Richard and Diane from across the room. They sat at a table in the back, away from everyone else. People were avoiding them. No one wanted to be associated with them. They'd made themselves social pariahs. About halfway through the reception, during the dancing, Diane approached my table. She looked terrified. "Martha, can we talk, please, just for a minute?" I looked up at her. "I don't think we have anything to say to each other, Diane. Please, I need to apologize. I need you to understand." "Understand what? That you slept with my husband for 3.5 years, that you spent my money, that you laughed at me behind my back? Oh, I understand perfectly." People at nearby tables were starting to watch. Diane noticed and lowered her voice. "I know I hurt you. I know what I did was unforgivable, but I'm begging you, Martha. I've lost everything. My job, my apartment, my friends. I can't lose you too. You're my sister. You're all the family I have left." "You should have thought about that before you betrayed me." I know. I was selfish and stupid and cruel, but I'm paying for it now. I've lost everything. Richard left me, did you know that? 2 months ago, he said he couldn't do this anymore, that it wasn't worth it. He moved back in with his parents. We're not even together anymore. I destroyed my life for nothing, for absolutely nothing.
I felt a tiny flicker of something. Not sympathy exactly, but maybe vindication. He left you?
Diane nodded, tears streaming down her face. He said he never really loved me. He said I was just a distraction, that he'd loved you all along, and he'd made a mistake. He tried to call you. Did you know that? He wanted to beg you to take him back, but you'd blocked his number. Of course I blocked his number. Why would I ever speak to him again? Because he loves you, Martha. He's miserable without you. We're both miserable. We've both lost everything. Diane grabbed my hand. Please, Martha, please forgive us. Please give us another chance. We're family. I pulled my hand away. We're not family anymore, Diane. You stopped being my sister the moment you decided to sleep with my husband. And as for Richard loving me, he doesn't love me. He never did. He loves what I provided. A stable home, financial security, someone to take care of him. Well, he's not getting that back, ever. So that's it? You're just going to cut us out of your life forever? That's exactly what I'm going to do. You and Richard deserve each other, and you deserve to be alone. I stood up and walked away, leaving Diane standing there crying. Several people had been watching our exchange, and as I walked past them, a few nodded approvingly. One older woman, someone I didn't even know, reached out and squeezed my arm. "Good for you, dear," she whispered. "Don't let them manipulate you." I spent the rest of the reception mingling with other guests, dancing with Jenna's father-in-law, enjoying myself. It felt surreal, being at this wedding, acting normal, while my sister sobbed in the corner and my soon-to-be ex-husband lurked in the shadows, but I refused to let them ruin this day. Not for Jenna, and not for me. Near the end of the night, Richard approached me. I was standing by the dessert table, and he came up beside me, keeping a careful distance. "Martha," he said quietly, "can we talk?" "No." "Please, just hear me out. 5 minutes." I turned to look at him fully. This man who had been my entire world for 25 years. This man I'd built a life with, and I felt nothing. Not love, not hate. Just indifference. "You have 2 minutes. Say what you need to say." "I made a terrible mistake," he began, his voice shaking. "The worst mistake of my life. I threw away everything for something meaningless. Diane meant nothing to me. She was just, I don't know what she was. A midlife crisis, maybe. A stupid, selfish mistake. But you, Martha, you're the one I love. You're the one I've always loved. Please, give me another chance. Let me prove to you that I can be the husband you deserve." You had 25 years to be the husband I deserved, Richard. You chose not to be. "I know, but I'm begging you. I'll do anything. Marriage counseling, therapy, whatever you want. I'll sign a post-nuptial agreement giving you everything if I ever cheat again. Just please don't throw away our marriage." "I'm not throwing away our marriage. You already did that 3.5 years ago when you first slept with my sister. I was weak. I was stupid. But people make mistakes, Martha. Don't I deserve forgiveness?" "Maybe you do deserve forgiveness someday, but not from me, and not now. You didn't make a mistake, Richard. You made thousands of choices, every single day for 3.5 years to betray me. You chose to lie to me. You chose to steal from me. You chose to mock me. Those weren't mistakes. Those were deliberate actions. And now you get to live with the consequences." "So that's it? You're just going to done after 25 years? "Yes, I'm done. The divorce will be final in about 2 months. You'll get the papers. Sign them and move on with your life."
What about you? How are you going to move on? We built a life together. Don't you miss that? I thought about it. Did I miss the life we had? The dinners together, the trips, the comfortable routine? Maybe. But I didn't miss him. Not the real him. I missed the man I thought you were, but that man never existed, did he? You've always been exactly who you are now, a liar and a cheat. I just didn't want to see it. Richard's face crumpled. He started to cry. Martha, please. Goodbye, Richard. I hope you find whatever it is you're looking for, but you won't find it with me. I walked away and didn't look back. I heard him calling after me, but I kept walking, out of the reception hall, through the parking lot, to my car. I sat in the driver's seat for a moment, my hands on the wheel, and I let myself feel everything. The pain, the anger, the betrayal, the relief. And then I started the car and drove home. The divorce was finalized 8 weeks later in late November. I didn't attend the final hearing. Patricia handled everything. She called me afterwards with the news. It's done. The judge signed off on everything. The house is yours, the retirement money is yours, the alimony starts next month. You're officially free.
Free! I turned the word over in my mind. I was 62 years old, divorced, alone. But I was free. Over the next few months, I started rebuilding my life. I redecorated the house, getting rid of everything that reminded me of Richard. I took up painting, something I'd always wanted to try. I joined a book club at the library where I worked. I reconnected with old friends I'd lost touch with over the years, and I started dating, tentatively at first, then with more confidence. I met a man named Tom at the book club. He was 65, a retired teacher, a widower. He'd lost his wife to cancer 5 years earlier and was finally ready to start dating again. We had coffee, then dinner, then more dinners. He was kind and funny and genuine. He was everything Richard wasn't. I told Tom about my divorce, about the affair, about everything. I expected him to be scared off, to think I was damaged goods, but instead he just nodded and said, "I'm sorry you went through that, but I'm glad you're here now." It wasn't a grand romance. We didn't fall madly in love overnight, but slowly, carefully, we built something real, something based on honesty and respect and actual affection. It was nice. It was healing. Meanwhile, I heard updates about Richard and Diane through the grapevine. Richard had filed for bankruptcy 6 months after our divorce. Between the alimony payments, the loss of clients, and the legal fees, he'd been financially ruined. He'd moved across the state to try to start over, but his reputation followed him. Last I heard, he was working as a clerk at an insurance company, making a fraction of what he used to make. Diane was worse off. She'd never recovered from losing her job and her reputation. She tried to move to another city, but couldn't afford it. She was living in a tiny apartment, working part-time at a grocery store. She tried to reach out to me several times, emails, letters, even showing up at my house once. I never responded. I had nothing to say to her. Jenna, my niece, kept in touch with me. She'd cut off contact with her mother after learning the full extent of what Diane had done to me. "I can't believe she did that to you," Jenna had said when we met for coffee a few months after her wedding. "You were always so good to her, so good to both of us, and she betrayed you in the worst way possible." "She made her choices," I'd replied. "Now she has to live with them." "Do you think you'll ever forgive her?" Pause. I thought about it. Could I forgive Diane? Could I forgive Richard? Maybe someday, far in the future, I'd be able to let go of the anger. But forgiveness didn't mean reconciliation. I don't know if I'll ever forgive her, but even if I do, I'll never have a relationship with her again. She killed the sister I loved.
That person doesn't exist anymore. About a year after the divorce was finalized, I was at the grocery store doing my weekly shopping when I saw her, Diane. She was working the checkout line, scanning items with mechanical efficiency, her face blank and tired. She looked up and our eyes met. She froze. Her mouth opened like she wanted to say something, but no words came out. I could have gone to a different checkout line. I could have avoided her. But something made me stay. I wanted her to see me. I wanted her to see that I was fine. Better than fine. I was thriving. I wheeled my cart to her line and started loading my groceries onto the belt. Diane scanned each item with shaking hands, never meeting my eyes. When she finished, she whispered, "Your total is $87.43. $87. Huh, almost the exact amount Richard had spent on her each month during their affair. The irony wasn't lost on either of us. I handed her my credit card. As she processed the payment, she finally looked up at me. "Martha, Save it, Diane. We have nothing to say to each other. Please, I just want you to know I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I know you'll never forgive me, but I need you to know that I regret everything. Every single day, I regret what I did to you. You were the best sister anyone could ask for, and I destroyed that. I destroyed us. And I would give anything to go back and make different choices." I took her receipt from her hand. "I believe you. I believe you're sorry. But it doesn't change anything. What's done is done. I know. I just wanted you to hear me say it. I'm sorry, Diane. I'm sorry for everything." I looked at her, really looked at her. This woman who had been my sister, my friend, my family. She was broken now. Completely broken. Part of me felt satisfaction at that. She was getting what she deserved, but another part of me just felt sad. Sad for what we'd had and what we'd lost. Sad for the sister who loved me once, before greed and selfishness consumed her.
"Goodbye, Diane," I said quietly. And I meant it. This was goodbye. Forever. I walked out of that grocery store and didn't look back. And it felt like closing a chapter. The pain was still there, would probably always be there in some form, but it wasn't consuming me anymore. I'd taken my life back. I'd taken my power back. 2 years after the divorce, I was doing better than I'd ever been. Tom and I had been dating steadily, and he'd asked me to move in with him. I was considering it. My house, not Richard and Martha's house, was paid off and comfortable, but maybe it was time for a new chapter. Maybe it was time to let myself be happy again. I'd also reconnected with some cousins I'd lost touch with, started traveling more, taken up yoga. I was healthier, happier, more confident than I'd been in decades. Betrayal had broken me, yes, but I put myself back together, and the new version of me was stronger than the old one had ever been. I still thought about Richard and Diane sometimes, usually late at night when I couldn't sleep. I wondered if they thought about me. I wondered if they regretted their choices. I hoped they did. I hoped they suffered, not because I was cruel, but because actions have consequences. They made choices that destroyed people, destroyed lives. They deserved to feel the weight of that. But I also knew that dwelling on them, on what they'd done, gave them power over me. And I was done giving them power. They'd taken 25 years of my life. They weren't getting another second. Last month, I ran into Roger Stevens, Richard's divorce attorney, at a restaurant. He was with his wife, and he stopped by my table where I was dining with Tom. "Mrs. Anderson," he said, nodding politely. "How are you?" "I'm well, thank you. Please call me Martha." "Martha, you're looking good. Life treating you well?" "Life is treating me very well, actually." Roger hesitated, then said, "I want you to know, I never approved of what my client did. I took the case because it's my job, but privately, I thought he was a fool. You deserved better." "Thank you for saying that." "He asks about you sometimes, Richard. Wonders how you're doing, if you're happy." "You can tell him I'm very happy, happier than I ever was with him." Roger smiled slightly. "I'll do that. Take care, Martha." After he walked away, Tom reached across the table and took my hand. "You okay?" he asked gently. "I'm perfect, absolutely perfect." And I meant it. I was 64 years old. I'd been betrayed by the people I loved most. I'd lost a husband and a sister. I'd lost money and time and trust. But I'd gained something more valuable. Myself. My self-respect. My strength. My independence. The woman who'd sat in that car outside Diane's apartment 2.5 years ago, crying and broken, was gone. In her place was someone new. Someone who knew her worth. Someone who wouldn't tolerate being treated as less than. Someone who understood that love, real love, doesn't betray. Real love honors and respects and cherishes. I learned that betrayal doesn't just happen. It's a choice made over and over again. Richard chose to betray me every time he texted Diane, every time he drove to her apartment, every time he took money from our joint account to pay for her lifestyle, every time he looked me in the eye and lied. And Diane chose to betray me every time she answered his calls, every time she accepted his money, every time she sat at my dinner table and pretended to be my loving sister. They made those choices, and they're living with the consequences now, just like I'm living with my choice, the choice to walk away, to demand better, to rebuild my life on my own terms. If you're reading this, if you're listening to my story and you're in a similar situation, if you suspect betrayal, if you know about betrayal, if you're being treated as less than you deserve, please hear me. You are worth more. You deserve more. Don't waste years of your life on people who don't value you. Don't make excuses for them. Don't convince yourself that you're being paranoid or oversensitive or demanding. Trust your instincts. If something feels wrong, it probably is. And when you discover the truth, don't let them manipulate you with tears and apologies and promises to change. People show you who they are through their actions, not their words. And if someone has spent months or years lying to you, stealing from you, betraying you, that's who they are. Believe them. And then walk away. Take your power back. Get a good lawyer. Document everything. Protect yourself financially. And don't look back. Let them face the consequences of their actions while you rebuild your life. It won't be easy. There will be days when you doubt yourself, when you wonder if you're being too harsh, when the loneliness feels overwhelming.
There will be nights when you cry yourself to sleep, when you can't believe this is your life now. But I promise you, it gets better. The pain fades, the anger lessens, and one day you'll wake up and realize you're happy again. Really, truly happy.
You'll realize that losing someone who didn't value you isn't a loss at all. It's a gift of freedom, a gift of a fresh start, a gift of possibility. I'm 64 years old now, and my life is better than it's been in decades. I have wonderful friends. I have a partner who treats me with respect and genuine affection. I have hobbies and interests and plans for the future. I have peace, and that peace is worth more than all the years I spent in a marriage based on lies. So to anyone out there dealing with betrayal, you will survive this. You will get through it. And on the other side, you'll find a version of yourself that's stronger, wiser, and more valuable than you ever knew you could be. Don't let anyone make you feel small. Don't let anyone convince you that you should settle for less than you deserve. You are enough. You have always been enough. And anyone who can't see that doesn't deserve a place in your life. My name is Martha Elizabeth Anderson. I'm 64 years old, and this is my story of betrayal, heartbreak, and ultimately victory, because I won. Not because I destroyed them, though they certainly destroyed themselves, but because I survived. I rebuilt. I thrived. And that's the best revenge of all. If you liked my story, please leave a comment below. Tell me your thoughts. Tell me your own story if you've been through something similar. Let's support each other. Let's remind each other that we deserve better, that we are strong enough to walk away, that we are brave enough to start over. Thank you for listening. Thank you for being here. And remember, you are worth fighting for. Even if that means fighting for yourself, by yourself. You are worth it. And please don't forget to subscribe to the channel and like the video and comment where are you listening from.